I'm going to be completely honest here. I went into The Mandalorian and Grogu expecting to hate it. I wanted it to be terrible so I could absolutely decimate it in my review and maybe feel a little better about what Disney has done to what is, quite possibly, my favorite IP of all time. I thought that, given the press it had received before it even released, it would be a shoo-in for blistering criticism and would finally be the nail in the coffin of Disney Star Wars. Honestly, I hoped it would be. You see, Star Wars was my first love. I wore out the VHS tapes that my family had as a kid, and it seemed like almost every waking moment I transported myself to a galaxy far, far away. While most kids were waiting for their acceptance letter from Hogwarts, I kept hoping the Millennium Falcon would land in my front yard to pick me up. I cheered when Luke destroyed the Death Star. I cried when Han was frozen in carbonite. And I cheered again when Darth Vader cast the Emperor down. I read the books, I played with the toys, I built the Legos, I slept under the sheets. And ever since Disney purchased the rights to Star Wars, I have been forced to watch for a decade as the stories, characters, and places that I love were systematically destroyed in the name of brand recognition, exponential profits, merchandising, and agenda pushing by people who actively hated the source material they were hired to draw from. So, when I tell you that this movie is not the dumpster fire that everyone's been saying, I hope you'll understand the position I'm in when I say that. By no means is it a good movie, let's make that clear right now, but it's inoffensive enough that I couldn't muster the energy to pick it apart like the rest of my colleagues in this space are sure to do. At the end of the day, the highest compliment that I can pay Mandalorian and Grogu is this. If nothing else, at least they didn't make things worse. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that this movie did not need to be made. Now, the response there is, well, does any movie need to be made? But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this movie feels like a 3-episode arc for the TV show that somebody smashed together and gave a $250 million budget. In fact, there are several moments in The Mandalorian and Grogu where you can actually feel where one episode ends and another begins. Now, I have no idea whether or not I'm correct, but given that Dave Filoni made his bones writing almost exclusively for television, it's not difficult to imagine that he had trouble converting his stories into a theatrical release. There are hard cuts here that completely pull you out of the movie, like you're waiting for the next week's episode release. Is it the end of the world? No. But what it means is that there's a lot of self-indulgent filler that's meant to soak up time in order to push the audience into the next plot beat. My biggest complaint about this film, by a wide margin, is that it's fallen into the pattern that other content released in the last couple of years has, that being the use of second screen writing. This detestable practice, and I do mean detestable, centers around the idea that any given audience will only be half paying attention to what's going on in front of them. Their attention will be divided between the movie and their cell phones as they scroll through TikTok, Instagram, Hinge, or whatever, and they'll need constant reminders of what's going on in the film. I hate this. Not only does it insult your audience because you're treating them like they're 6 years old, but this practice has become so common that there has to be some truth to it. And I can't tell you how sad that makes me. Could you imagine if the likes of Casablanca or Fellowship of the Ring, dear God, I just now realized they're going to do this with those stupid Andy Serkis movies. Could you imagine if they had this writing pattern in them? If Aragorn had to tell Frodo 3 different times that he would have followed him into the very fires of Mordor. I weep for the state of American cinema. My next issue with this script is something that isn't unique to The Mandalorian and Grogu, but it is something that I'll call out every time I see it. That being logical inconsistencies designed to serve the scene rather than the story. I'm going to keep my comments vague here to avoid spoilers, so bear with me. I stopped counting at 6 different times in this film where things just happened that made no logical sense in order to set up a set-piece moment or to artificially ratchet up the tension. For example, there's a moment where Mando is trying to line up a blaster shot to hit an escaping Mark. Behind him, the Mark has left a bunch of explosives to either hinder or kill Mando. Rather than have Grogu use force push to simply clear away the explosives, the script has him tapping frantically on Mando's helmet, trying to get him to hurry up and take the shot so they can make their escape. Pointless. There's another moment where Mando activates a flashlight on his helmet to try and find enemies in the dark, despite the fact that by this point in the film, we already know that his helmet has thermal vision good enough to see through walls. It's things like this that kept popping up that completely pulled me out of the movie. And it's a style of writing that has become all too prevalent in Hollywood. It's single draft writing designed to get the content out the door as quickly as possible with no regard for its quality. Now, to be fair to the Mandalorian and Grogu, the cast they got for this movie is perfectly serviceable. I may have my issues with the yoked Hutt, but Jeremy Allen White does a fine job with what he's given. Pedro Pascal turns in a good enough voice acting performance for a character that never asked too much of him in the first place, and his stunt double, who's actually in the suit 99% of the time, does a fantastic job with the physicality required to make the bounty hunter come to life. Next we come to Sigourney Weaver as Commander Ward. Now, there's been a lot of hullabaloo around her phoning in her performance in this movie, talking about how she deserves the Razzie for her profound lack of effort. But I'll just say this. While it is true that she looks like she'd rather be anywhere else than on a Star Wars set, and it looks like she had more fun doing Paul than she had here, the Queen of Sci-Fi does not deserve the lashing she's received over her performance. Is it going to win Oscars? Hell no. But it's good enough. And that's really the subtitle to this whole film. It's good enough. As I said at the beginning of this video, I wanted to hate this movie. I wanted to burn it at the stake for being yet another nail in Star Wars' coffin, and reap the rewards that such hatred creates in the online space, that being engagement and views. But I have to be honest here, for my own sake, so I can look myself in the mirror and say that I did the best job that I possibly could, and I did it with integrity. And honestly, this movie just left me feeling numb. I didn't really like it, but I definitely didn't hate it. It's a disposable piece of content meant to cash in on the Star Wars IP and will be promptly forgotten inside of 6 months. Aside from Dave Filoni, it was nobody's passion project, and while it looked amazing most of the time, and the score was actually fairly interesting, it was just blah. To illustrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you a little story. I saw this movie as I do with all my theater outings with my wife. Normally, once the credits roll, we leave the theater and head home, jabbering about what we've just watched for the whole ride. Good or bad, we're talking about it for the whole 20-minute drive, and even more once we get home. We ran out of stuff to say about the Mandalorian and Grogu within about 5 minutes. It's a movie. That's honestly all I can say about it. Take the wives and girlfriends so they can see Grogu. Take the husbands and boyfriends so they can see Mando. Take the kids so they can see Star Wars content. By the end of the week, you'll have forgotten all about it and be ready for the next one. I suppose there are worse ways to spend an evening. One of the things that I've always loved about the Star Wars universe is how the stories told within it don't have to be good versus evil, or saving the galaxy from utter destruction. There's all this room for morality tales and character studies and love stories and space westerns that are just fun rides. It's how The Mandalorian began its life, after all. And one of the best things about The Mandalorian and Grogu is that, if it does well, it's proven the viability of Star Wars movies beyond Jedi and Sith, beyond lightsabers and stormtroopers. If this middling movie can turn a profit, it might attract some talent to the space. Talent that loves the IP and knows how to write. Talent that's, well, talented. Don't get me wrong, I'm not holding my breath, but given the darkness that has surrounded this universe for the past decade, I can almost catch the barest glimmer of hope. Of course, even as I say this, I realize that unless Dave Filoni gives someone else a shot at writing, we're going to be stuck with his self-insert fanfiction until he goes the way of Kathleen Kennedy. Seriously, everything he's done so far seems to link back to the Clone Wars animated show in some form or fashion, and I'm getting really tired of being beaten over the head with it. There's a whole galaxy out there, Dave. Let someone else tell a unique story or two. Maybe just not about a coven of space lesbians creating 2 girl boss chosen ones in an effort to undermine the bedrock of the Star Wars IP. Just a thought. What the hell do I know? Anyway, that's all I've got for you this time, so if you could do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons, I'd really appreciate it. Every little bit really helps me out. Also, head down to the comments and let me know if there's anything you guys would like to see me cover in the future. And while you're at it, go ahead and take a look at the other videos on my channel, or hit up my website to see my blog and maybe check out one of my books on Amazon. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.